Just as Dad wished, I brought our maid along. Ha! I couldn't believe my ears for a moment. Edgar, standing before his father, smirked and referred to me as a maid. Then his stepfather, scrutinizing my face, suddenly burst into laughter. "What's happening?" I asked. Struggling to stifle his amusement, his father replied, "Oh, when you mentioned Edgar's fiancée, I couldn't help but wonder what sort of woman she would be. And here we have someone from a modest background. I almost want to meet her parents." Hearing this, Amy couldn't hold back tears of frustration and fled the scene. Thankfully, there was a restroom nearby for female guests in the party area. I sought refuge there and called my dad. After explaining the situation, Dad rushed to my aid. "Hello, I'm the father of the woman you referred to as a maid. Who are you?" Upon recognizing my father, Edgar and his father began to panic, only to face consequences later from my father and another ally who arrived. "My name is Amy, and I work as a salesperson at a department store. At 40, I'm still single but seeing someone named Edgar, who is 5 years younger. Edgar, 35, is the son of the music store owner located within the same department store where I work. Dating the boss's son had its challenges, so Edgar and I kept our relationship under wraps at work. We mostly communicated through messages to avoid any awkward situations. During breaks, I eagerly checked my phone for Edgar's messages. Today was no different, and I was delighted to find a message from him suggesting we spend our day off together. Our relationship was still new and thrilling. Edgar's family owned a music store, and they had a piano worth $2 million. Edgar had been playing the piano since childhood. "I'd love for you to see our family's piano. Then I'll play something for you," Edgar messaged. "That sounds wonderful. I can't wait to hear you play," I replied. Edgar was genuinely polite and composed, qualities I cherished in him. Considering our ages and the progression of our relationship, marriage was certainly a topic on our minds. However, on the day Edgar suggested for our date, I had to decline because my mom was visiting. "I'm sorry, but I have to stay home. My mom is visiting that day," I explained. 10 minutes later, Edgar replied, "Your mom is coming over. I'd love to meet her if possible." After contemplating it for a moment, since meeting the parents was a significant step in our relationship, I agreed swiftly. "That sounds like a plan. I was thinking of introducing you to her eventually." "I'll pick you up in the morning then," Edgar replied eagerly. "Really? That's great. I'm looking forward to it," I responded warmly. Edgar was visibly excited about meeting my mom. However, the thought of introducing him to her began to weigh on me, adding a touch of complexity to our relationship. On the appointed day, I arrived early at the nearest station to pick up Edgar. Since my mom had driven over, there was no parking space available for Edgar. Plus, if they hit it off, we thought we might all enjoy a drink together, so Edgar opted to take the train. Emerging from the station gates, Edgar looked nervous in his brand new jacket. I greeted him cheerfully, hoping to ease his nerves. "Good morning, Edgar. What's with the nerves?" I greeted him cheerfully as we entered my apartment. "Good morning. I guess I'm just a bit anxious about meeting your parents," Edgar replied, his face still tense and his voice strained. "Don't worry, my mom is really easygoing," I reassured him, and gradually Edgar began to relax. Inside, my mom welcomed Edgar with a smile. "Nice to meet you. I'm Amy's mom," she said warmly. Edgar introduced himself confidently. "Nice to meet you too. I'm Edgar West, and I'm dating Amy." Instantly, the smile faded from my mom's face, and I realized I had only ever mentioned Edgar's first name to her. But why did my mom react strangely to Edgar's last name? "Mom, is everything okay?" I asked, concerned. "Oh, it's nothing. Nice to meet you, Edgar. Thank you for being there for Amy," my mom replied, her smile seeming forced. Despite inviting Edgar into the living room, the atmosphere remained tense. Turning away slightly, my mom inquired, "So, what do you do for work?" "I help manage my dad's business. We oversee 5 music stores in this area, including the one at Amy's department store," Edgar replied confidently, seeming to regain his composure. However, my mom didn't appear particularly interested in Edgar's response. "Mom, don't you see the connection between Edgar's company and us?" I tried to bridge the awkward silence. "Well, I suppose," my mom responded with little enthusiasm. Edgar, still caught up in his nerves, didn't seem to notice her distant demeanor. "There's more to it. I haven't mentioned it yet, but my mom runs a violin school from our home. She's a professional violinist who graduated from a conservatory." I interjected, hoping to lighten the mood. Really? Then there certainly seems to be a connection between us. Edgar replied eagerly, his eyes brightening. I almost mentioned my dad, but I hesitated as I noticed my mom's expression darken further. What troubled me even more was how my mom continued to scrutinize Edgar's face, her brows furrowed. Even Edgar, despite his nerves, began to sense her suspicious glances. Just as I was about to change the topic, my mom turned to Edgar abruptly. I'm sorry, but could you leave for today? She requested, her tone firm. What? But he just got here. I protested in surprise. Edgar, clearly uncomfortable, rose slowly from his seat. I understand. I apologize for intruding on your family time. His words carried a hint of disappointment. I wanted to accompany him to the station, but my mom stopped me at the door. It's all right, I'll go back by myself. Edgar, I'm really sorry. I apologized again, but he didn't look back as he left our home. What had my mom seen in him that she didn't like? Intrigued, I hurried back to the living room, seeking answers. Mom, what's wrong? What didn't you like about him? I pressed my mom, finding her cleaning up in the kitchen. She turned to face me slowly, her expression solemn. I think Edgar is a good person, she began quietly. Then why? I started to ask, but my mom interrupted, her tone serious. Because you've made your decision about him. I didn't want to say too much, but honestly, I can't agree with this marriage. Is it because I'm 5 years older? I asked, trying to grasp her reasoning. No, it's not that, my mom reassured me, motioning for me to sit down in the living room. Can you listen to me until the end? It might be difficult for you to hear. I nodded silently, my heart pounding as she explained her concerns in detail. Her reasons were unexpected and made me feel conflicted. I understood where she was coming from, but it didn't change my desire to marry Edgar. I understand your concerns, Mom, but my feelings for Edgar are genuine. This issue isn't about him. That's why I want to meet his parents, too, I explained, hoping she would understand. My mom looked at me with worry. I'm concerned and honestly don't want you to go through with this, but if you're determined, I can't stop you. I trust you, so do your best, she said softly. Thank you, Mom, I replied gratefully. So, I mustered the courage to ask Edgar to introduce me to his parents. Edgar seemed relieved and even seemed to have anticipated my request. Really? I was starting to think your mom hated me after our last meeting. Edgar chuckled nervously, pulling something out of his pocket. It was an engagement ring. Before anything else, let's make it official. Will you marry me? Edgar asked with a suddenness that made me blush deeply. It was the proposal I had been eagerly waiting for, and without hesitation, I replied, yes. Then came the day for me to visit Edgar's home. This time, I was the one feeling nervous and tense. Edgar arrived in the morning with a bright smile, trying to reassure me. Don't be so nervous. My dad is very friendly, he said reassuringly. Yeah, I hope so, I replied, trying to calm my nerves. Edgar's mother wasn't around, leaving just him and his father at home. I was mentally prepared to fit into their all-male household. However, when we arrived at Edgar's house, I was taken aback. It was my first time visiting, and I hadn't imagined it would be so grand. I knew Edgar's father was a CEO, but their wealth exceeded my expectations. The mansion-like gate and expansive grounds looked like something out of a movie. Inside, we were led to a spacious party room where the famous $2 million piano stood prominently. Wow, you could host a dinner show right here in your house, I commented, marveling at the setup. We often entertain clients here. In fact, we're hosting a party tomorrow with a renowned pianist, Edgar explained. A renowned pianist? I was surprised by Edgar's revelation. Just as I was about to ask more about it, a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, exuding wealth and authority, entered the room. Welcome. I'm Edgar's father, he greeted me formally. It's nice to meet you. I'm Amy, I replied politely. Edgar, unusually excited, interjected, Amy, relax. Don't be so formal. His attempt to ease my tension felt forced and somewhat awkward. Then, unexpectedly, Edgar said something in front of his father that left me stunned. Just as Dad wanted, I've brought our maid along, Edgar remarked arrogantly in front of his father. Ha! I was taken aback, shocked that Edgar, who had always shown me respect for being older, would now refer to me so dismissively. This is perfect. Our household has been all male for so long. Having a maid would really help, his father chimed in, staring at me intently before bursting into laughter. What's happening here? I asked, trying to understand the situation. Well, when you mentioned Edgar's fiancé, I wondered what kind of woman she'd be. And here we have someone from humble beginnings. Makes me curious about your parents, he said, struggling to suppress his amusement. The joke was cutting, and I looked to Edgar for support, but he just smirked. Dad, come on. It's not about looks. Besides, if she's a maid, we'd want someone older who can work hard, right? Oh, and Amy's mom was beautiful, so maybe she takes after her dad, Edgar quipped, his tone mocking. What do you mean by that, Edgar? Are you mocking me too? I responded, feeling panic rise within me. This wasn't the Edgar I knew, and it was unsettling to see him change so drastically in his father's presence. As frustration grew, his father turned to me with a question. Your mother is beautiful. I look forward to meeting her. By the way, what does Amy's father do? I don't think you've mentioned it yet. Both father and son seemed to belittle me, and I hesitated to share anything about my father with them. My dad travels a lot for work, I replied guardedly. Edgar smirked again. So your mom teaches music or something, and your dad's out there earning money. Sounds like they're always busy, barely catching a breath. Must be tough. I felt the weight of their judgment, and it stung. Finally, both the father and son had not only demeaned me but also insulted my entire family. Overcome with frustration and tears, I fled from the room. Thankfully, there was a women's restroom nearby in the party area where I could hide. I called my dad, knowing he was nearby due to work. Hey Dad, I said, my voice wavering. Hey Amy. What's going on? Why are you calling in the middle of the day? Dad's cheerful tone didn't waver despite his demanding job that often took him around the world. Hearing his voice after so long, I couldn't hold back my tears. Dad, I managed before my emotions took over. Dad spoke gently. It sounds like something tough happened. Take your time. Tell me what's going on. Grateful for his understanding, I recounted everything that had transpired. I can handle what they say about me, but disrespecting my family like that, I couldn't take it. After I finished, Dad replied solemnly, Okay, stay right there. I'm coming over now. Really? What about your work? I asked, concerned. When it's my daughter's crisis, work can wait. Don't worry, Dad assured me. Knowing Dad was on his way made me feel a bit stronger. Thank you, Dad. You know how to get to the place, right? Yeah, of course, Dad confirmed before ending the call. I wiped away my tears and gathered my resolve to return to where Edgar and his father were chatting amicably. Amy, you're back. I thought you might have left, Edgar commented casually. Unfortunately for you, since your father was so eager to meet my parents, I've called them here as you requested, I stated firmly. At my words, my father-in-law smirked and remarked, calling someone away from work in the middle of the day, and they can drop everything to come. Sounds like a pretty easy job he's got. Like father, like daughter, I suppose. This should be interesting. Edgar and his father laughed mockingly, but their taunts no longer intimidated me. I knew once they saw my dad, they would be in for a surprise. About 10 minutes later, Dad arrived. Edgar hurried to greet him at the door and returned looking astonished. Is that really Amy's dad? He's like a celebrity, Edgar exclaimed in disbelief. I glanced towards the entrance where my dad stood, impeccably dressed in a formal suit, likely preparing for an event. However, my father-in-law remained skeptical. Why are you so surprised, Edgar? It's natural for fathers to make an effort when visiting their daughter's fiancé's home. He must have borrowed the suit, my father-in-law remarked dismissively. What are you talking about, Dad? He arrived in a luxury car that's rare around here. Who would lend something like that? Edgar countered, causing my father-in-law's face to tense up. Then Dad approached us and greeted him. Hello, I'm the maid's father. My father-in-law dropped his wine glass in shock at seeing my dad. You are, he started, clearly surprised. Dad glanced around the spacious house and commented, such a large house and no staff. Yet you have Amy, your son's fiancée, working as a maid? No, that's not true at all, my father-in-law hurriedly denied, waving his hands. Was there a misunderstanding from what Amy told me over the phone? She mentioned being insulted as poor face, similar to her father. Dad continued calmly. No, my father-in-law stammered, clearly uneasy. Edgar, sensing the tension, asked anxiously, Dad, what's going on? Who is this man? Watch your tone. This gentleman is Roy Jones, the renowned pianist who will be performing at our important party tomorrow, my father-in-law declared, leaving Edgar equally stunned. Really? Hey, Amy. Why didn't you tell me? Edgar asked incredulously. I was just as surprised when Edgar mentioned a famous pianist coming over. I knew my dad was playing at a party tomorrow, but I had no idea it was here, I explained. Edgar shook his head. That's not what I'm asking. Why didn't you tell me your dad is Roy? Well, Edgar, you always steer conversations back to yourself. There was hardly any opportunity for me to share about my own family, I replied, feeling the weight of his previous mockery still fresh. Come on, you've been shifting blame since then, Edgar retorted defensively. His father chimed in, addressing me sharply. Amy, Edgar has a point. Even if you're the daughter of a famous pianist, shouldn't you have disclosed your parents' occupations before coming to your fiancé's house? His words made me pause, unsure how to respond. Just then, my dad stepped in to support me. Well, that may be true, but are you implying that if Amy weren't my daughter, you would have treated her as you suggested, like a maid? Dad countered firmly, not backing down. My father-in-law was left speechless by the question. Seeing his perplexed expression, my dad chuckled and added, regardless of intentions, it seems marrying into this household involves taking on all the household chores. What do you mean by that? Edgar's father demanded. Glancing around the house, my dad continued, I've heard rumors that any maid who enters this house quits soon after. They say it's because the master is difficult to work with, and the son here tries to charm every young maid. Observing closely, it was evident that there wasn't a single maid or servant in such a large estate. While the party room was immaculate, likely prepared for tomorrow's event, the rest of the house showed signs of neglect. Edgar, did you really intend to marry me just to make me a maid? I love you sincerely, I asked, searching his face for any hint of remorse. Edgar remained silent, his head bowed, before finally murmuring, I didn't have a choice. No choice. So anyone could have been the maid as long as it wasn't me? I pressed, hurt and incredulous. Edgar couldn't meet my gaze. Seeing his avoidance, my dad intervened sternly. So you never loved Amy. In that case, we're ending this engagement, Dad declared firmly. What? Wait, just hold on a minute, Edgar protested, but my dad's resolve was unwavering. There's no need to wait. Furthermore, I'll be withdrawing from tomorrow's performance under these circumstances, Dad stated calmly. What? That's a separate issue. What about our important guests tomorrow? My father-in-law began to panic. That's not my concern. If you need a pianist, have your son perform. I've heard he's quite talented, Dad replied coolly. My son's piano skills aren't suitable for our esteemed guests. Please understand your frustration with Edgar, but, my father-in-law pleaded desperately, bowing deeply. Looking down at his father, Edgar erupted, Dad, stop painting me as the villain here. This is all your fault. You drove Mom away with your relentless demands and you've driven away every maid you've hired. Shut up. If we lose our guests tomorrow, our business will be ruined. Edgar's father shouted back, their argument escalating until a loud crash came from the rear of the house. You're right, Edgar. You're the worst for making your wife suffer. My mom's voice echoed through the room, full of disappointment and anger. Oh, you're here, Edgar responded, surprised by her sudden appearance. I came as soon as I got the call from your dad. It was easy to sneak in since there's no gatekeeper, Mom explained, her gaze piercing through my father-in-law, who looked visibly shaken by her presence. You are. You remember me. You overworked and mistreated my best friend. It's been a while since I confronted you last, Mom interjected firmly. I knew that the mother-in-law Edgar had pushed away was Mom's best friend from college. That connection was why Mom had opposed my marriage into this family. She stood tall, glaring at my father-in-law with unwavering resolve. After you drove her away, she came to me. She joined the same orchestra, excelled in her violin studies, and now she teaches at the violin school I run. She's doing that. You haven't changed at all. You treated your ex-wife, who you deemed plain-looking, like a servant, never appreciating her true worth, Mom accused sternly. Attempting to justify himself, my father-in-law fumbled over his words. Yes, I knew she graduated from a conservatory, but once she married into our family, she had to conform to our ways. I was taken aback by his feeble excuse. Turning the house where no servant would stay into a mess, it's no wonder any capable wife would want to leave, especially when the owner of a music store, of all people, squanders the talent of an exceptional violinist. What does this family think a wife is supposed to be? Just so you know, even though Amy didn't pursue a career in music, it was because she held strong beliefs and independence. She always pursued her own potential without following the path set by her parents. Dad nodded solemnly at Mom's words. It was a relief to see my parents understanding me despite feeling isolated due to their separate music tours. I used to rebel against their lifestyle, but now I understood their perspective. Their unwavering belief in me moved me to tears. My father-in-law had no rebuttal to Mom's assertions. Beside him, Edgar began to cry, dropping to his knees. I've had enough. I don't need a wife. Just let her go back. It's all Dad's fault anyway, not mine, right? Edgar seemed eager to end the discussion, but my father-in-law wasn't willing to concede. Edgar, what are you saying now? If your marriage with Amy falls apart, tomorrow's reception will be ruined. Instead of worrying about that, why did you ask him to play the piano tomorrow? Dad retorted with frustration, focused solely on defending his company. Even now, you're only concerned about your own interests. I was willing to perform tomorrow if I saw any hint of remorse from you, but now I unequivocally refuse, Dad asserted firmly. What? No way. My father-in-law's disappointment was palpable as he realized the gravity of his mistakes. Mom seized the moment to deliver another blow. You haven't even paid alimony to your ex-wife yet, have you? She struggled for 30 years since the divorce, so you'll be compensating her for all her hardships, Mom declared, causing my father-in-law to turn pale. Now that tomorrow's plans are ruined, our company is in jeopardy, and I have to pay alimony to my ex-wife. This is too much, he lamented. But wait, there's more, Mom said, casting a sly smile toward Edgar. Look here, you clueless son-in-law. Edgar looked around bewildered. Who else could it be? Even though the engagement wasn't official, you've deeply hurt Amy. So you owe her compensation. Well, all the family finances are managed by my dad, so please ask him for the compensation, Edgar responded, proving Mom's point about his cluelessness. However, my father-in-law vehemently shook his head in refusal. Edgar, I have no knowledge of that. You're responsible for your own compensation. This is impossible. This whole mess is Dad's fault. Edgar and his father continued their futile argument. Watching the absurdity unfold, we couldn't help but burst into laughter, grateful to have uncovered the true nature of this family before committing to marriage. I felt immense gratitude toward my parents for their unwavering support. The following day, despite proceeding with the party for their clients, the absence of my dad's piano performance left guests disappointed, leading them to depart early. This setback spelled dire consequences for the management as the loss of these crucial clients exacerbated the company's already precarious financial situation. With the father's tarnished reputation and the company barely hanging on due to client support, bankruptcy loomed inevitable. As their store was housed within the department store where I worked, news of their downfall was inevitable. Soon after, their business collapsed into bankruptcy. Yet our entanglements persisted. Edgar and his father adamantly refused to fulfill the compensatory demands made by my mom and me, prompting us to initiate legal proceedings against them. To compound matters, my father-in-law attempted to counter-sue my dad for abruptly canceling his performance on personal grounds. However, my dad graciously acknowledged the cancellation's personal nature during litigation. I regret withdrawing from the performance due to personal reasons. I will honor the compensation owed, so please proceed accordingly. By accepting their lawsuit, my father-in-law inadvertently weakened his position in resisting our demands. Reluctantly, he settled the outstanding alimony owed to his ex-wife, while Edgar eventually paid the compensation owed to me. Subsequently, Edgar and his father, having lost everything, including their home and the prized $2 million piano, faded into obscurity. Reports surfaced of sightings at a hotel event venue, but they were later spotted working as night cleaners, far removed from their former status. This experience prompted me to reassess my perspective. I used to dismiss remarks like, "You must be proud of your accomplished parents." I prided myself on independence and moving away from home. Yet now, I understand my true source of pride lies in having exceptional parents. Recognizing this, I resolved to attend my father's concerts, something I had neglected in the past. Today marks my father's birthday concert, and I'm here with my mom. It's been too long since I last heard him play the piano live, and it fills my heart with warmth. Having such a remarkable father fills me with gratitude. My mom, too, enjoys his music, listening with contentment. It's a serene moment, and I feel immensely fortunate to have these parents. Moving forward, I'm determined to show them the appreciation they deserve in ways I hadn't considered before. As I listened to my father's music, I silently made that promise to myself.